52. Let's go ahead and start the Finance Committee meeting here on April 19th and following the Public Facilities meeting. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. If everyone could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and public notification has been sent out to meet all the Freedom of Information Act. So let's move on then for the approval of the agenda. If I could have someone make a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Passman. And a second, was that Brian?
I'll take it. Sure.
Thank you, Brian. All right, we'll move on then to approval of the minutes from February 25th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve those minutes, or is there any amendments to those minutes?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. You need to either call the vote or say that it's by.
I'm sorry. I appreciate that. Thank you, Brian. I try to move on too quick here. Regarding the approval of the agenda, is there any objection to the agenda? Seeing no objection to the agenda, we'll approve it without objection. And then we'll move on to approval of minutes and approval of minutes for February 25th.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fong, Mr. Passman. And is there any objection? If there is no objection, we also will approve that without objection. And that's the approval of the minutes. We will now move on to citizens' comment. Is there any citizens' comments that we have here this afternoon?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, no citizens' comments. So then we will move on then to the next portion of our meeting, which we always like to hear from Ms. Richland, and it's an update from our Chief Financial Officer. So the floor is yours, Ms. Richland.
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. So good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're having a great week so far on this Monday. You have before you the March 2021 financial report for the general fund. Same format and appearance that you are accustomed to seeing. I'm going to hit the high points today since we do have David Irwin, online with us today. He was our managing partner with Malden & Jenkins, the firm that conducts our annual external audit, and he is prepared to do a lovely presentation this afternoon on the results of the 2020 audit. So I'm going to kind of give you a brief overview of the general fund as it stands as of the end of March, and then I will pass the ball over to him. Of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. All right, so overall, you will notice we have quite a nice jump in our revenues this month, and primarily that is attributed to the tax collections. The due date was March 31st, as you guys know, and I know that Ms. Walls is present, so I want her to hear firsthand that her department has done an excellent job collecting those taxes, as we are now at 95.3% collected of our total budget for the year, which was $106,217,968. And of that, we've collected just over $101 million. So we are truly appreciative to their department and all the hard work that they do to bring those tax monies into the county. But before I get ahead of myself, let me jump back here at the top. So our total budget was $130,300,431. And to date, we have collected $121,273,756. So that leaves us just over $9 million to be collected for the rest of the year. And again, below that, even though we are only 75% of our year completed, we are at 93% collections for total revenues. I'm going to kind of hit the high point, as I said. Licenses and permits are right in line at 75%. Intergovernmental, although it looks low at 52.9, that has been based on quarterly payments. So we've received the first and second quarters. We should be receiving the third quarter probably in the next week or two. So that will then jump back up to 75 and it will be where we would expect it to be. Charges for services, again, is quite high this month. And we know that has a lot to do with the real estate market and the transactions that are being recorded by the Register of Deeds. I would expect, just by the way that we record these revenues, that dollar figure will drop a little bit next month. And let me tell you a little bit why. When the revenues are sent over to his office, the revenues are recorded in gross. The county does not keep every single dollar that comes in for recording of deeds. So we keep a portion of it, the state gets a portion of it. And so what will happen next month is as we remit the state's portion back to them, that revenue will drop just a bit. So I want you to know that before I breeze past that and you see that number change a little next month, because that's important. Fines and forfeitures, they are still trading a little bit low. I was really hoping that we would start to see those come up a little more in keeping pace with the remaining of the year, but we've yet to see that. So we may be in need of reaching out to some of those departments for kind of a status update and hoping that they can help us firm up our projections for the remainder of this year. Interest, so I'm not terribly concerned that we're only going to collect close to $87. We'll do that overall entry at the end of the year, but I do have a concern that we will not reach our full budgeted amount. I think I've commented on that during the last month, that because we were unable to invest as much of our funds as we typically would have during the delay of tax collections, we will see a drop in that amount for the year. And additionally, it's not just the cash amount that we're able to invest, it's the market itself. Interest rates, I think you guys are aware, have fallen substantially, and we're simply not earning at the same rate that we once were. So I want to point that out to you. And then lastly, the miscellaneous is trending a little bit high, but that's because we've had greater sales of county property and recyclables than what we anticipated. So I know I breezed through that, but does anybody have any questions they might like to ask before I move on?
Yeah, since we've completed 75% of our year and we're at 95%, can you put that in perspective a little bit? If we were at 75% last year or the year before, what would we have expected to receive? About the same percentage?
Yes, sir, I can. Brenna, if you go to the for ad valorem only. So if you'll look at the graph just below, well, rather than below, in the middle of that page, last year, this is the very first column. Last year, go up, Brenna, to the first page. There you go. The very first column there says ad valorem taxes. So fiscal 20 is the green and fiscal 21 is blue. And you can see that we are really neck to neck right where we need to be there. And you'll also notice as you look at the rest of that graph, for many of them, 20 was just a slight bit ahead of where 2021 is. This time of year, license and permits, for example, are down about maybe 5% or so. The intergovernmental seems to be lagging about 10%. And then you've got the charges for services, which is kind of the anomaly for the year. Fines and forfeitures, we see that's lagging quite a bit. It looks like last year they collected around 100% of their budget by this time, whereas in our current fiscal year, we are just hovering above 50. So there's some definite deviations there in terms of your specific revenue categories. But on the very last page, Brent, if you want to go ahead and jump to the very last page, the overall graph of revenues, kind of month over month as it builds. Yeah, so overall, it's the top one, right? Yeah, right there. Overall, you'll see that by March of 2021 in comparison to March of 2020, we actually are, even though there's fluctuations in each of those individual revenue categories, we're neck to neck with where we were this time last year. And as you look back at the graph on the first page, you'll see that the big difference there is coming in from charges for services and the miscellaneous category that's sort of carrying the other revenue types that are lagging behind. That's a great question. Are there any others? All right, I'm not seeing anybody. All right, I'm going to move on then to the second page, which will be the expenditure piece. Okay, perfect. All right, again, we've got our initial budget, which was balanced to our revenues there at the top. Then we have a little bit of a carryover just below that of 1.3 million for a total budget of $131,652,878. And then below that, we have, in our traditional style, our actual expenditures to date with encumbrances. And then we've got a total amount that has been either expended and or encumbered to date. And that amount is $94,902,774, which is approximately 72%. So our expenditures as of March are, a little bit less than the percent of the year completed. So that's, I feel like, a pretty good sign of our department's ability to really steward their budgets and act with fiscal responsibility. So I want to give a big shout out to everybody for that as well. All right, we'll hit the high points here again so that we can get to our audit presentation. Most of them, if you look at that graph there, they are all neck to neck, right around where they would have been in the prior year, which we like to see some consistency there. That's helpful to us when we're doing budget projections and forecasting. The two that are kind of our anomalies here in the current fiscal year are the other category and the capital projects. And we've talked a little bit about these before. In the other category, we have a bit of fund balance that was used for the Beaufort County Economic Development Corporation from escrow funds. So that's nothing new here this month. And then capital projects, we've talked about this a little bit. We've got an ambulance that's being purchased from insurance proceeds that was not in our expenditure amount for the year. So that was an addition that's causing it to go over. But we also have encumbered $698,582 there for other capital projects. And we've talked a little bit about this before, and that they don't always follow a equal distribution in terms of expenditure, but they are a bit over, and we hope that that has given you a pretty good explanation on why we have exceeded our $906,000 budget and we are at $1,062,000. And I will be happy to answer any questions you may have about that category as well, if there are any. All right, I'm not seeing or hearing anyone. So Brenda, if you'll just go to that last page one more time with the graphs there at the bottom, the expenditure comparison. If you'll pull it up just a tidbit more. All right, a little bit more. Perfect, okay. So again, we've got 2020 in green and 2021 in blue. 2021 is still a little bit lower than 2020 was. So again, thank you to our department heads for really stewarding their budgets this year, especially since they were quite a bit lower than they were in the previous year. I do still think that by the time the end of the year approaches, that the gap or the spread between those two lines will decrease a bit and they'll get closer together than they are now. But all in all, I'm very pleased with the general fund's performance year to date. So I am happy to answer any questions anyone has, but if you don't have any, I'm going to pass it to Brenda. Actually, is Hayes doing the carryover budget update next, or is Mr. Irwin next?
We should probably let Mr. Irwin go, Whitney, if Chairman Lawson agrees.
Yes, I agree, and I think that's what we had talked about before the meeting. So I know he's on a time schedule. So let's go ahead and let Mr. Irwin go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys.
Well, I certainly appreciate it. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to make sure. All right. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you all are doing well. Again, my name is David Irwin. I'm with Malden Jenkins. I was the partner who oversaw this year's audit of the county's financial statements, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here to discuss the audit. I believe you all have already received a copy of the financial statements. So the purpose of today's presentation is just to provide you all an overview of our independent auditor's report, hit a few of the financial statement highlights, talk about the results of the compliance audits that we issue as part of the audit, discuss some information that the auditing standards requires that we communicate to you all, and obviously to answer any questions that you all may have. Now, the financial statements themselves, they are the responsibility of county's management and members of the council. As your independent auditors, our responsibility is to issue an opinion on these statements. We conduct our audit in accordance with general accepted auditing standards and governmental auditing standards. And I'm happy to say that we are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on this year's report. This is what you want. This is the highest level of assurance that we can provide you as your external auditor. What this means is that, in our opinion, the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting standards or generally accepted accounting principles. Before I get the financial statements, I do want to take a moment to thank your staff for their hard work this year. I believe I mentioned this to you all back in February when we met. But obviously this year's audit certainly came with its own unique set of challenges. Whitney arrived at the county, I believe, in October. So we were auditing a fiscal year that ended 3 months before she was even hired. So when you consider that, when you also factor in obviously the pandemic and the numerous staff departures that occurred during the year, and as well as the institutional knowledge that left with those departures, Whitney Hayes and their staff, they really did an excellent job under some very unique and unusual circumstances. They were very accommodating to our audit team. They worked hard to address all of our questions and get us everything that we needed in order to meet the state's extended deadline that they had. So again, just a special thank you to them. We certainly have appreciated their hard work this year. Now, for a brief overview, the county prepares what is called a comprehensive annual financial report, otherwise known as a CAFR. And a CAFR requires the inclusion of additional information that goes above and beyond the basic financial reporting requirements. This document is submitted annually to the Governmental Finance Officers Association, otherwise known as the GFOA, where they put it through a pretty stringent review process. They have their professional staff as well as a special review committee that looks at the county's financial statements. And when they look at your CAFR, their goal is not to assess the financial health of the county, but rather they want to make sure that the readers of your financial statements have the necessary information in this document so they can do so themselves. And through this review, the GFOA has once again awarded the county the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And I believe this is the 11th year in a row that you all have received the certificate. So again, congratulations on that. This is an impressive document and one that you ought to be proud of. As you look through the financial statements, one section I always like to point out is the Management's Discussion Analysis, otherwise known as the MD&A. This begins on page 4. It's right after our audit opinion. I would strongly encourage you all to read this section if you can. It's only 15 or so pages long. It's written by management. It does a really good job of introducing and summarizing the basic financial statements, as well as providing an analytical overview of the financial activities that occur throughout the year. There's also quite a bit of comparative information in this section, meaning that financial activity for fiscal years 20 and fiscal years 19 are disclosed. And again, to me, this adds a lot of value to the reader. It gives you a much better understanding of the good, the bad, the ugly of the current year activity when you have the prior year activity right beside to compare it to. So again, I can certainly understand you not wanting to read this 200-page document cover to cover, but if you can, please take the time to read through the MD&A. Now, the county's basic financial statements, they are broken up into 3 components, the first of which being your government-wide financial statements. Now, the government-wide statements, they provide a broad view of the county's operations in a manner similar to what you would see in a private sector business. All the county's funds are combined under either a governmental activities or business type activities column. As you can see on this slide, the county ended the year with assets and deferred outflows of resources around $845 million. Around $573 million of that are your capital assets net of accumulated depreciation. You all had around $366 million in liabilities and deferred inflows of resources, which resulted in an ending net position of approximately $478 million for the year. That's an increase of about $66.6 million compared to prior year. When looking at your revenues, they were around $262 million this year. That's around $47 million higher than prior year. That is the result of the the majority of that is the result of the $45 million in sales tax revenue that you all received in fiscal year 20. Looking at your expenses, they're pretty much right in line with prior year, slight increase about $5 million to a total of $195 million for the year. One thing to keep in mind, we're talking about net position. That is not what you all have in the form of cash to spend as you see fit. Net position is merely the difference between total assets and total liabilities, only a portion of which is cash on hand. So again, this is the financial highlights of the government-wide statements. That being said, this is really the only time you'll see the county's financial activities reported in this manner. In the day-to-day operations of the county, the focus is more so on the individual funds themselves. Which brings me, to the second component of your financial statements, which again are the fund level statements. Again, this is what you typically see throughout the year. This component focuses on individual parts of the government, and it reports the county's operations in more detail than that of the government-wide statements. And when you talk about all the different funds of the county, of primary interest to you all is the general fund. It's the main operating fund of the county, and therefore it accounts for the majority of your revenues received and funds expended. We have a couple of charts on the next few slides that breaks down the general fund's revenues and expenditures for the year. Total revenues of the general fund were around $137.9 million. That's around a $2.2 million increase compared to prior year. Obviously, looking at this chart, the vast majority of your revenues are derived from property taxes, which was around $107 million this year. And that represents about 78% of your total revenues for the general fund. A couple other significant sources of revenues worth mentioning. You all had charges for services of around $14.2 million and intergovernmental revenue of around $9.5 million for the year. This chart represents the general fund's expenditures for the year by major function. Your expenditures total around $123 million this year. That's an increase of around $3.6 million compared to prior year. As you would expect, public safety, public works, and general governmental expenditures represent the majority of these expenditures. Public safety, that was around $49 million this year, and that accounted for approximately 40% of the general fund's total expenditures. And that percentage is actually on the lower end of what we typically see with other local governments of your size. Typically, public safety is at least 50%, sometimes as high as 60, 65%. So. Public works expenditures were just over $16 million for the year, and your general governmental expenditures were right at $37.2 for the year, both of which were consistent with fiscal year 19. The chart on this slide shows the fund balance history of the general fund over the past 5 years. It's always interesting to me to kind of see where you were and compare to where things currently stand. And, as you can see on this chart, you all had a relatively good year for the general fund. Fund balance increased around $10.5 million for the year for an ending balance of $53.8 million. And again, as I mentioned earlier with net position, fund balance, that's not what you all have in the form of cash to spend as you see fit. Fund balance is merely the difference between assets and liabilities, only a portion of which is available cash. So, another thing to keep in mind, the general fund incurs expenditures of a little over $10 million per month. So you all ended the year with unassigned fund balance equal to approximately 4.5 months worth of operating expenditures. With you all having a June 30 year end, a strong fund balance is necessary to kind of cover your expenditures through the months of July through November when your revenues are typically down. The GFOA, again, that's who you all submit your CAFR to for certification. Depending on your year end, they recommend that entities maintain a fund balance somewhere between 3 to 6 months worth of general fund operating expenditure. So, you all are right in line with GFOA's recommendations. And, again, looking at this chart, you all have done a really good job, especially over the past couple of years of getting your fund balance up to that recommended level. So congratulations you all on that. A couple other funds I want to briefly mention are the 3 enterprise funds of the county, which are the Stormwater Fund and the 2 airports. Now, again, enterprise funds, they are used to account for operations in a manner similar to that of a private sector business. The intent of these funds is to be self-sufficient and to generate sufficient operating revenues to cover your operating expenses. And the chart on this slide shows your operating revenues and expenses for each of these funds. As you can see, the Stormwater Utility Fund, they had a good year. End of the year with operating income of $2.1 million. Ladies Island Airport was flat. I mean, it had a slight operating loss of around $8,000, and the Hilton Head Airport had operating income of a little over $1 million for the year. And when you factor in all the non-operating revenues, expenses of these funds, as well as the significant amount of capital contributions that the Hilton Head Island Airport receives, you can see on this slide the effect, the increase in net position for fiscal year 20 compared to fiscal year 19. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the Ladies Island Airport, it was flat for the year, while the Stormwater Utility had an increase in net position of $2.1 million, and the Hilton Head Island Airport's net position increased a little over $4 million for the year. But again, one thing to keep in mind with that $4.1 million increase in net position for the Hilton Head Island Airport, around $3.1 million of that came from federal grants and not operating revenues. The third and final component of the county's financial statements, they are the footnotes. Again, the footnotes, those disclose the county's accounting methods, and it provides an expanded explanation of your operational and financial results. There really weren't any significant changes in those this year. So unless anybody has any questions on those, I won't go into those in any detail. But as part of the audit, there were 2 compliance reports that we also issue. The first of which is your single audit report. Again, the single audit, that's a compliance report, a compliance audit that is required when an entity has over $750,000 in federal expenditures for the year. You all had a little over $5 million of federal expenditures during fiscal year 20. As was the case with the financial audit, we are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on the single audit as well. The second compliance report is the Yellow Book report. And that is a report on the county's internal controls and compliance with laws and regulations. We did have 4 audit findings report to you all this year. If any of you would like to read those in detail, they begin on page 189 of the city's financial statements. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, this was a unique year. And in my mind, these findings are simply a reflection of those circumstances and the turnover in staff that you all had during the year. Whitney and I have spoken at length regarding these findings, and she is already in the process of correcting these issues going forward. So, again, if I'm in your shoes, I wouldn't be overly concerned. I see these findings as being a one-time issue, and I do not anticipate any of these recurring in future years. One final item to discuss with you all is just certain information that the auditing standards requires that we communicate. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the county is receiving a clean or unmodified opinion. We had no difficulties in dealing with management. We had no disagreements with management, and we had no uncorrected misstatements. And again, we are independent of the county as required by governmental auditing standards. That concludes my presentation. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there's quite a bit of information in this report. What I've tried to do is just hit the highlights of what I think is of most importance to you all. However, if there's anything in here that I did not touch on that you have questions about, please don't hesitate to ask. But again, just want to thank your staff again for their hard work this year. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to be of service to you all and look forward to working in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Irwin. And as Mr. Irwin has mentioned, it has been a crazy year with COVID, and then obviously Ms. Holland leaving in May, and Mr. Williams had just come on. And then Whitney and Ms. Harriet didn't come on until later on that fall. So obviously, Hayes, we want to thank you for a great job you did, and even Chairman Passament, and who was the previous finance chair, and also Councilman Herbershon, who was the current chair from last year, that all the work they put in to make sure that we were able to move forward. So is there any questions that we have for Mr. Irwin at this point? Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. By any chance, could you just give us a high-level overview of the 4 audit findings and some information as to whether or not those existed in prior years, or those really are just one-off, one-time things?
Sure. We have not had any audit findings for you all for the past several years. The four findings that we have, number one is just general accounting matters. There were delays in the closeout of the audit, which again resulted in the audit not being issued until March. Typically the state and GFOA requires that these audits be completed within a 6-month time frame. The state granted you all a 3-month extension, so we did meet the state's extended deadline of March 31st. So we did not have a problem there. But again, just a delay in getting things reconciled and closed out in time, which again resulted in a delay of the audit being completed. The second finding had to do with bank reconciliations, and Whitney can probably attest to this. I think there was some different issues in getting bank reconciliations reconciled and tied down to their general ledger. And again, that was an ongoing issue that lasted well into these past several months. I think it wasn't until January, February before we finally got everything tied down and corrected. So we just recommend from that standpoint that bank reconciliations are done on a monthly basis, and any issues or concerns, discrepancies are investigated and addressed in a timely manner. The third finding was your timeliness of federal drawdowns. We noted that there were grant reimbursements were not sent in a timely manner, so therefore federal revenue, your revenues and your receivable were not properly recorded in your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So we had to issue and post some significant adjustments to get that corrected. So we recommend there that management just follow procedures to ensure that the reimbursement process is done in a timely manner. And the fourth one is just the submission of the federal financial report form, SF 425. That was not submitted to the FAA as required by the Airport Improvement Program. Again, I think that's just something that slipped through the cracks. I think that's something that Alicia probably did. And upon her departure, it was just something that slipped through the cracks. So we just recommend that procedures are put in place to make sure that those reports are filed with the FAA in a timely manner. So again, as I stated earlier, I think these are one-time issues. We've talked with Whitney extensively about it, and again, she's already in the process of making sure these are corrected going forward.
And Councilman Hervashon, if I could add, I've prepared a little bit more of a detailed corrective action summary that I've provided to Ms. Brenna. So at the conclusion of this meeting, I've asked that she share that with you guys, so and with all of council, so that you'll have a more detailed outline of what steps we intend to take on remedying these and the staff involved in those processes. So I hope you'll find that helpful. If you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to call me or email me. I'm happy to discuss it. And one point of clarification, David, you mentioned that we had gotten the GFOA award for excellence in financial reporting. I just want council to, or those that are present on the finance committee, to know that that was for fiscal 2019's annual audit that we don't get until fiscal 20, and it has to go in the front of fiscal 20's audit report. We've not yet been rendered an opinion by GFOA for the fiscal 20 document that was just completed at the end of March. So just a quick point of clarification there. Although we are hopeful that we will get it, we have not officially heard word from GFOA and probably will not for several months. But as soon as we hear back from them one way or another, I'll definitely let you guys know. So, thank you, Mr. Irwin. I appreciate it.
That's a good point. That was for fiscal year 19. But as Whitney stated, we have submitted the CAFR to GFOA this year, and we fully anticipate you all getting the award for what will be the 12th consecutive year. So.
Is there any other questions for Mr. Irwin before we let him go? Seeing no questions, Mr. Irwin, thank you. That was actually a very detailed and to the point presentation. We appreciate that. And again, it's easy to decipher. Obviously, we'll have to go back and read the 200-page document to back that up. So, but thank you very much. We appreciate you being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I think is Mr. Irwin planning on coming back when we present this to council? Is that the plan? So,
yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. All right, great. So if there's any more questions, Mr. Irwin will be with us at either the next council meeting or the one after that, whenever it is presented to council. All right. Thank you, Mr. Irwin.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Chairman Lawson, may I say one thing to council, just so they're aware that the annual audit has been uploaded, and there is a link on our homepage just below the departments and various tabs there. It's kind of easy to see about Middleways on the homepage so that the public can have access to that. Thank you very much.
All right, great. And again, Ms. Richland, thank you for all your hard work. Ms. Harriet Hayes, we know how much time you've put in, and you know, obviously our past chairman, Councilman Passman, and Chairman Fevershaw as well. So thank you. If there's nothing else, then let's move on to the next agenda item. And Hayes, I think this is you. This is going to be regarding carryover from last year and going in from 20 to 21.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. Yes. Do you want me to share my screen, Brenna, or are you going to pull it up?
I can do it. Just give me a second, okay?
Here, I can pull it up if you want me to. I got it. There we go. All right. Can everybody see that? So this is our carryover budget from 2021. We split it out into little different buckets this year, or this year. This finance committee meeting, we have the carryover amount, which was originally awarded. We wanted to see how much had actually been expended, how much was encumbered, and how much was our remaining balance. And so I went through all of these projects and went through and saw which ones were complete, which ones were not, which were encumbered. Some of them have small balances. Some of them haven't been tackled yet. Hopefully they're going to get tackled in the next several months. The DNA lab expansion at the sheriff's office has about $347,000 in there in the amount encumbered. I contacted Suzanne Cook at the sheriff's office and West Chapel. They plan to have the CO on that building by May 30th. So that should be completed here shortly. You look at the rest of them, they're expended in this column. You get down to everybody's favorite topic, pickleball courts. We got a little bit more money in there that we're planning on spending, hopefully upgrading some of the courts by year end. We have a lot of facilities maintenance. A lot of it's wrap up. A lot of it's encumbered already. Very few things that haven't been done yet. I did want to note on the detention center generator, there's a $157,000 carryover. They've actually completed the project. They're in the process of tying up loose ends, but they haven't actually we haven't actually paid that money out. But we expect to do that in the next week or two. And scroll down to the revenue fund, and Treasurer had a camera update, and that's finished and been paid off. So, excuse me. And then we get down to the stormwater proprietary fund, and we bought our dump trucks. We have a couple things that are still out there outstanding for a total of 120, but so far, so over $2.1 million budget, we've spent 1.2 of that. We have about $585,000 left. So we're hoping to have all of it done by the end of the year, but we wanted to give y'all an update on that. So if anybody has any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for Mr. Williams? All right, I don't see anybody. I can't see if there's a question, please speak up. Don't see any hands.
Mark Stu.
I'm sorry?
Stu.
Oh, Stu, go ahead.
Yeah, I may be of a minority opinion, but it's always seemed to me that unexpended, well, certainly unencumbered should stay as they are, but unexpended amounts should basically accrue to the general fund and then be reappropriated in the next budget, because some of those things may not rise to the same high probability or high priority as some of the other things. So I'm probably in the minority, but that's just my opinion.
All right, thank you, Councilman Rodman. Any other comments or questions? Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Williams. We appreciate all your hard work. Let's move on then to action item number 10. We've already handled number 9 earlier. So we are looking now for Ms. Walls, who is our treasurer, for her budget presentation for fiscal year 2022. So Ms. Walls, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairman Lawson, and everyone for having me here today. It's nice to be in person with some of you at least, and to have those of you attending virtually to hear a little bit about the Treasurer's Office, what we have going on, and what we're looking for as we walk into fiscal year 2022, which is going to be here before we know it. So going to the first slide, I just wanted to give you an overview of how we've approached the budget for this year. Because I think the current fiscal year, we can all agree, has been unique and great in some ways and challenging in others. And if Ms. Brenner, you just want to progress through this slide so it's all, thank you so much. I think it's not going to surprise anybody to know that Beaufort County is growing in every way possible right now. Our bills, the number of bills and the number of accounts that we're collecting on is increasing. And anytime you send more bills, guess what you're going to have? More questions and more concerns and more inquiries, which of course has taken time from people. So we're going to come back to that. Transaction volume. You have more bills, you hope your transaction volume is increasing, and that's exactly what we've experienced, which is a good thing. It means more revenue. Our collection rates are extremely healthy. We are past where we were last year as of the second penalty date. It's outstanding, and we're almost to where we were as of April 15th last year. So even though the bills were late, we're almost back to where we would have been anyway. And last but not least, the dollars under management, currently managed by our office, is increasing as well. So growing, growing, growing. As we looked at the challenges and the opportunities that provides, we see 2 areas of focus for fiscal year 2022 that is going to make sure that we continue the success that we've had in fiscal year 21. And those 2 areas are in people and technology. So first, I wanted to go over the collection. So you all have received this report previously. As you can see, we are ahead of the first penalty date as of March 31st. I want to thank Mr. Greenway for being a great sport and helping us in doing a reminder mailing. I think that really helped people remember the deadline and just not let the uniqueness of the year make them late. So we feel that was a good audit, a good boost to the collections. The next slide is actually information, and thank you to Ms. Brenna for being so accommodating this morning. I just got today. So this is where we were as of the second deadline, which was April 15th of last week. And you can see compared to the second deadline last year, we're ahead, not just in collected dollars, but also our collection rate, which is, in my mind, how I benchmark the work being done, in our office. So we are in a healthy position, and there's a lot of work behind these simple numbers, but we're in a very good position. All right, so what does this mean year over year for billing volume? I've been in the Treasurer's Office for a few years, and it never seems like it gets slower or less busy. We have surpassed 450,000 bills. This is all bills, because keep in mind, I handle delinquency with our tax collector here, not just current bills in the annual tax mailing. So we're seeing an increase, which you can expect in a growing county. In addition to that increase, I want you to know that this is just hard copy bills from our print vendor. It is not manual bills created and sent out by the auditor's office, and it is not e-bills. So this is just normal billing processes, not the special mailings that we've done. So we're seeing an increase, right? Now let's get to the customer inquiries on the next slide. Thank you. What happens? Now this is a quarterly comparison. This was challenging to show you yearly. But you can see it's going to ebb and flow based on whether it's, I quote, busy season or not. It seems we're always busy, but it does tend to coincide with mailings. Any major mailing, we're going to see an uptick in phone calls, an uptick in online inquiries. This is not payment activity online. This is online inquiries. Now, what we see uniquely in this past 12 months, 18 months, is we were closed. So you are going to have a more significant increase in phone and online inquiries than we probably would have otherwise. Let's get to the next slide, because I want to show you the rate of incline, that progression. The more bills is driving that volume in the increase. And we need to make sure that we're equipped to not just transact on behalf of our customers and for the agencies, but that we can assist our customers when they have questions. They see Treasurer's Office at the top of that bill and assume that because we take the payment, we handle everything. Gratefully, we don't. So, but we do need to make sure that we're equipped to care for our customers and ensure they have what they need. So here are some solutions. We're going to talk about solutions to that, because I don't think that the solution is entirely a staff member solution. There's going to be some exciting ways we're going to be able to handle that. Ms. Bretna or Tiffany, I don't know if you're doing that. I'm going to click to the next thing. So see, we're going to have an idea about that. So let's go to the next slide. You've seen in a previous presentation this same graph before. I've updated it to show the information and data since that last time I've shown this to you. And if you look, these jumps in the orange line is going to be our non-face-to-face activity. And you can see that at certain times a year, historically, our in-person transactions at certain times a year surpassed online. I can tell you that that's not what we want from an operational standpoint. It takes more time and more personnel to handle an in-person payment than it does an online or lockbox payment. Then just before COVID, I was so excited to share with you guys the first time that our online payment activity had surpassed our in-person activity. And then COVID happened and we were not open. And you can see we did handle a good bit of manual mail in the office, and we still continue to do that, but the majority of our payments, even since reopening, are through the lockbox and online, which I know we're still new in this reopening, but it is indicating to me that our customers, although we're open, are still choosing to use these alternative payment methods. Maybe because they feel more comfortable, maybe because they never used it before COVID, and now they see it maybe wasn't as hard as they thought it was. So that is a continuing trend, and if Ms. Brenner wants to advance just one click. So you can see that our in-person transactions are declining, and in the next click, you're going to see that our online are increasing. Our non-in-person transactions are increasing. I don't think any of this is a surprise, but when we look at, Ms. Brenner, if you want to click 2 more times, thank you. We see that incline, that increase is becoming steeper. So that we're anticipating because of the bills. I already know 6 months from now, we're going to have more questions. There's a lag. So we want to make sure that we're prepared. So on the next slide, how are we going to do that? So our solutions for success in dealing with what we believe is going to be a great fiscal year 2022 is first the implementation of the county's compensation study, that the results of that are included in the budget that I have inputted into SharePoint. This is going to allow us to maintain great team members and attract new ones for openings. Now, I cannot stress the importance of this. we typically will use a recruiting agency for technical positions, not for all positions, but some. And in my last conversation with them, unless we were willing to pay more and include completely telecommuting work, they would have little to no candidates for our openings, because that is the norm. We're not competing with right here in Beaufort County anymore. We're competing with a wider geographical area. So my job is to make sure we can operate, and having equitable competing compensation opportunities for candidates is going to make sure that we can continue to operate successfully for our customers. Now, the next item is we are going to need, oh, sorry, go back. We're not there yet. Thank you, Brenna. We will need additional team members that are back office members that will handle the volume and increased volume in our online transactions. We look at that work not as a per transaction volume like a frontline teller, because we know what a general capacity is for a teller, but by import volume. How many reports are they managing every day? Because there are some steps that are involved, validating, ensuring it ties to the bank account. We want to make sure that we can handle all of that and leave time for exceptions, because let me tell you, there are always exceptions that customers need assistance with. And then last but not least, and probably the most exciting thing for me, is we're going to be introducing some next level technologies outside of what we're already doing. That is going to allow us to have all of our customer inquiries in one location. The time they called, we can chat with them through our website, their phone call log. So if they chat, call us, and email, it will all be in one place automatically. And it is going to be such an incredible opportunity for our customers to get better service, smaller wait times, and empower our staff members to answer questions more efficiently. And then our customers don't have to repeat themselves every time they happen to get someone else new on the phone. It's so frustrating for them. So this is drastically going to improve our customer experience and our internal operations. And my expectation is that it will maintain or reduce the number of frontline workers we have manning our phones. I think there's just going to be a lot of benefit to having a more efficient record keeping of these inquiries. So now, those are the things that I respectfully and humbly ask for going into fiscal year 2022. I have an incredible team, and my job is to come and ask for the things that are going to help them be successful, and this is what we need. Now, the next subject is not something we need, and it's going to be about the credit card fees. I didn't take this request lightly. To some of the newer council members, you wouldn't know maybe, but when I joined the treasurer's office 10 years ago, I joined in the recent aftermath of unbudgeted for credit card fees in a quite sizable amount needing to be paid for by the county unexpectedly. So I am highly sensitive to this subject. But last year, when the county closed, we did a survey asking our customers, how do you want us to serve? I mean, it was a customer service survey. The number one complaint out of 6,000 or more responses was not, I have to pay taxes or they're too high. It was this credit card fee, which of course, historically, we've had complaints about this fee, as you would imagine. We would have complaints about it, but I really was surprised to see the proportion, because that was the number one complaint. Okay, now we're getting through the past 18 months and it continued to be a highly complained about matter. And for me, and as treasurer, my team, we don't have a preference on how these fees are paid, because they're going to get paid. That's not the subject of really our discussion today. It's how do we want them to be paid? They're currently added on in a customer's transaction when they pay by a credit card. It's taken off the top. The county never sees that the revenue from that fee. It goes directly to our processor who handles paying the credit card companies. the amount of complaints, I felt I had a responsibility to ask a question because I don't have the authority to change it, even if every customer complained. So over the past 2.5, 3 weeks, we've initiated another survey. It was one question, and you can see that as of Sunday evening, this is as of Sunday, we've had over 12,000 responses from our customers, because at the end of the day, that's who I'm here to represent. I know that's who you all are here to represent, because I don't want to present something that they don't really want. It would be imprudent to base a budget request, for me to base a budget request on a handful of complaints without being purposeful in asking, what do our customers want? Obviously, we serve more than 12,000 people, but this is the results 2.5 weeks into this survey, that 72.2% prefer that the credit card fees are incorporated into the county's budget as an operating expense. As a result of that, I felt you needed to see that. I certainly want to tell our customers that we've asked the question and we've all discussed it and decided the best path forward wherever you deem that to be.
I have a question for you on that, if I might, Madam Treasurer. What is the total amount, the dollar amount of those fees?
Great question. Let's get to the next slide. If Brenda, if you don't mind, thank you.
Okay.
So
that's about a 1%. I'm sorry, I'll let you finish. Go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
That's okay, because I know exactly what I think you're going to say, and I'm not going to disagree with you. Either a taxpayer is paying this. It's the method that it's getting paid. But so let me go through this, and then I'll answer your question as best as I can if I have the wrong assumption. So currently, 20% of all bills are paid by credit card. That's down the left-hand side. Okay. Now across the top is our growth rate, the percentage of increase in how many bills we are billing, not how many credit card payments are, the bills we're billing. So we currently have about a 30% growth rate in particularly our online payments, but our total bills. So if everything stayed the same, we would expect for this year, in actuality, credit card fees being $703,779. So based on things right now, that is what the expense would be. Now, in my budget request, I did not ask for $700,000. I referenced 10 years ago the county being on the hook unexpectedly for that expense. And my expectation is if this fee is not passed on directly, and we change how it is, how it is paid for, that there will be an increase in the percentage of credit card payments. I don't know if our growth rate will go from 30 to 20 or 30 to 40, but I would expect that the percentage of payments being made by credit card will increase. Ms. Brown, would you mind doing a couple clicks? There you go. So the top left is that there's no growth in bills and 15% are credit card payments. That's a best case type of scenario. Worst case scenario being that we have 50% increase in bills every year, which I don't think is likely, and 100% of them paid by credit card. That 4 million is the worst case scenario.
Thanks.
Now, Ms. Brenna, if you could click just one more time. I expect us to be in that ballpark based on our previous activity.
Well, let me go ahead and make a comment then for you. This is almost certainly not going to happen. And I say that because we're limited in the amount of increase of our millage rate. If we even had a flat budget, if the rest of the county budget were completely flat, and clearly it's not, with you asking for pay increases for your employees and new employees, we're limited to the amount that we can raise the millage rate, and to incorporate this into the budget would be an impossibility. It just can't happen.
And Councilman Flewelling, that's fine, but I think our shared constituents need to hear that from their council members. We're getting a lot of complaints, and I do want to show that there is efforts being done to improve the services or reconsider how they're being served so that our customers can feel listened to. So I understand what you're saying. It doesn't prevent me from asking the question.
I have a comment. May I?
Yep, Mr. Summerall, go ahead.
Two reasons why this is a very, very bad idea. Number one, as soon as you announce that we're going to socialize the cost of paying by credit card, you're going to see an exponential rise in that. And it's not going to be $703,000. I can tell you it's probably going to be at least triple that. I mean, what we're doing essentially is we're subsidizing people's frequent flyer miles or whatever they get for their bennies on their credit card. The second thing, the reason it's a bad idea is it's from a responsibility standpoint, it's very, very bad, because if people are going to put that on their credit card, that means that they're going to pay it over time. And I think everybody on this call right now has received an email or a letter or something from the credit card company recently raising the rates to about 30%. So if we agree to do this, let them put it on their credit card, we're losing whatever we're losing, and they're on the hook for about 30% of their outstanding balance, which is, I mean, in other words, we're encouraging bad behavior on their part. And of course, for me personally, when I had a bill due the other day, I think it was about $1,900, and I said, look, will you give me a discount for cash, or do I get the frequent flyer miles? And the woman kind of looked at me like, I said, fine, I'll take the frequent flyer miles. In other words, they were out 3% of that $1,900. I gave them an option, negotiate with me, give me a couple of bucks off, and I'll write you a check. But they didn't want to do that. But I don't want to see the county getting that mess. Is encouraging bad behavior, irresponsible financial behavior on the part of people, number one, and number two, costing the rest of socializing this cost to every taxpayer in Beaufort County is a bad idea.
I'd like to weigh in.
My point, if I might continue, it kind of builds on what Paul just said. Even asking the question, Madam Treasurer, it puts it out there like it is an option for the county. And as well as I do, it's not an option for us. And so I really would think it would be more beneficial and create a more harmonious atmosphere between the citizens of Beaufort County and their elected representatives down the line if your employees were just instructed to tell them the truth, which is that is not a county obligation. It's your choice to make that payment by credit card.
It is not the practice of all counties in South Carolina. There are other tier 1 counties who do not pass on that fee. So it may not be feasible in this exact manner for Beaufort County, but it is being done in other areas of the state with very positive results according to those counties. When I was speaking to the treasurer from Spartanburg County, he couldn't say enough about the customer response and the amount of the ease of use and how much better it encouraged online payments versus coming into the office, which of course is more efficient. So, I mean, as far as being harmonious with my constituents, I think we each need to leave that up to ourselves to ensure we're harmonious. But it is information that I'm in a unique position to have as your treasurer. I can't tell you what to do. I can't change the laws to make it possible, but I am giving you the information because I think that you should have it. Now, what you decide to do with it, like I said, I don't have a preference, even if it was possible.
Okay.
Because I'm with the check.
Go ahead, Joe.
2 points. Number one, we understand that credit cards are a fact of life. Everybody uses them. Everybody should know that when you use a credit card, there is a fee attached to that. So for us to assume that, well, we're going to accept the payment of that fee, I don't think is appropriate. Number two, we do have the ability for individuals to pay their taxes online through their bank without a fee.
Correct.
So we should encourage them to do it that way. If they choose to pay by credit card, there is a fee attached to that, period, end of conversation.
Correct. And we're already advising our customers with that information.
Yep.
Like I said, the building being closed, and I know we're reopened, but there were other counties who made this switch and are providing this, are utilizing this avenue of paying for those fees. I don't have a preference.
Right. I would rather see you do some of the things that are going to make you successful with technology, not paying the fees on behalf of individuals.
And just remember, this is just a recommendation or even just information for us. For us to change this, we would have to vote on this as a council and have to make a decision. So again, Maria, we appreciate you bringing things like this to us, because without you bringing it forward, there is no conversation about this. But yes, and again, just please go on with your presentation and continue with where you were.
So it's probably not relevant, but one of the things I thought you would ask me on the next slide, Ms. Brenna, is the total cost for the people, the tasks, and the expenditures related to manual processing. And that is an annual cost that you see right there as our current volume is. So one of the questions that I received from a customer in that survey was, well, what would you be saving? It really would depend on who made a switch and who didn't, but these are the total actual expenditures related to that. So that was really all that I had to present to you guys. If you have any additional questions, like I said, I want to be responsive to our customers. I'm not a policymaker. I'm a tax collector, and I'm handling transactions. And when we're getting a lot of complaints about those transactions, I believe I have a responsibility to communicate that to all of you, give you the data I have, and leave it up to you to make the decision that you can or can't make. But unless the question is asked, there's no discussion. And I felt that our customers had a strong enough opinion that it warranted bringing it forward to you. But like I said, if you can't or don't want to do that, I don't have a preference. Our operations continue as they are.
So Maria, when somebody comes into your office to pay their taxes, do they pay by credit card in person as well?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Maria, thank you. And obviously, the credit card situation is something that we can address as council if we decide to do that. And it's something that obviously right now, Maria, we appreciate you always thinking out of the box, which you again brought it to our attention this year with our taxes, getting that forward. And as crazy as it sounds, this might be something that we look at right now and say absolutely not. But in 2 or 3 years, as the market changes, as credit cards change, it could be something that is very viable. So again, Maria, thank you. Are there any other questions for any other parts of Maria's presentation that she had today?
Mr. Chairman, this is Councilman Dawson. I would just add to this discussion that paying by a credit card, that is a choice. All the citizens of the county have that choice. And when they consider that choice, then it's stipulated that there's a fee incurred for doing so. That's not the only option, by which means they have a paying their taxes. So again, it's a choice. And if that's the choice they make, then the fee goes with it.
Good point, Mr. Dawson. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Mark Stewart.
Yep, Mr. Robin, go ahead.
I'm generally in agreement that we shouldn't do it. And that last slide where you had the cost of doing those, if the amount of money, if we were doing it and had more people doing it by credit card, are you saying there's some offsetting savings that we would see?
I mean, certainly you wouldn't, if even with a 30% growth rate in billing, you would have a reduction in transaction and services elsewhere. Someone who is not coming into the office because they're paying online would you won't need as many people in person. I think the question, or at least in previous discussions with some of the members before today's meeting, was, okay, but how much of that would be savings realized right away? And I can't answer that because we're growing very quickly right now. And I'm just going to be honest with you, because if I could give you a projection, I would do it. We're growing so quickly we wouldn't see that savings in a vacuum. So if we had 50% of our transaction volume, let's just say, go to online and paying on credit card or paying online, period, we would see a drastic reduction in our operation piece, our face-to-face, our phone calls, our online inquiries. However, if we have an increase in our build volume by 50% at the same time, that freed up time, that bandwidth is going to be occupied by other matters. So the only way I could show you any idea of what expenses could potentially be saved for was by showing you the direct costs associated with processing those payments in other manners.
I'm in favor of not having the county do it. And I think to somebody's point, you would encourage a lot of high-end people to just do it by credit card, and that would be a $500 to $1,000 charge that the county would have to absorb, depending on where they are, particularly a lot of second homeowners. Big number, potentially.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Ms. Walls? Maria, thank you. You, as usual, are always to the point and very, very
Lawson.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Lover.
Yeah, just a quick question. Someone has asked a question. Is there a difference between a credit card payment and a debit card as far as charges?
As far as charges right now, no, there is not. Online, it is the same.
Okay.
We could change that. Potentially that could be changed if we were to change how we're paying that fee. But based on the current structure, it is the same. There is still a processing charge. It's not like a debit card is not cash. And because it's tied to people's checking account, they assume it is like cash or a check. And that's not the case.
But you do not charge me for a check.
That is correct.
Okay.
Before our transition to our new banking relationship, there was a charge for e-checks, but we were able to negotiate that so that it's zero across the board.
Okay, thank you.
Great, good question, York. Anybody else? Questions or comments?
It was truly not mine, but it was someone else. But yeah, thank you.
You can take credit for it, York. That's good.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything for Ms. Walls? Again, Ms. Walls, thank you so much. We appreciate all you do. Thank you so much. You do a great job. And again, we do truly appreciate that.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right. Is there anything else to come before this committee today? If not, and is there any more citizens' comments? Brianna, have we seen anything out there? If not,
no, sir, I don't see anyone online.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you all for being here today. We appreciate you being here. The Finance Committee meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
I open?